At my billionaire father's funeral, my fiancé, Ethan, suddenly knelt and proposed to my stepsister. The world fell silent for a moment. All the false condolences turned into genuine shock and scrutiny, their gazes piercing my back like needles. I looked at Ethan's profile, brimming with fake devotion, and the blush of shy triumph on my stepsister Tiffany's face, and my stomach churned. It wasn't sadness. It was pure disgust. I slowly pushed through the crowd and walked towards them. My heels sank into the grass, making almost no sound. Ethan looked up, his eyes holding guilt, but more so, a desperate resolve. Stella, I'm sorry, but I can no longer lie to myself, nor to you. True love cannot be controlled. You're right. I cut him off, my voice as calm as if discussing the weather. I raised my hand, and the engagement ring he had placed on my finger gleamed coldly beneath the overcast sky. So, I no longer wished to control my revulsion either. I gently loosened my fingers. The ring dropped onto the grass with a faint, almost inaudible thud. Congratulations. You two are perfect for each other. A match made in hell. I paused, my gaze sweeping over Tiffany's instantly pale face, and added, Don't worry about the wedding gift. I'll send it to you in hell. A collective gasp rippled through the onlookers. Without another glance at them, I turned and walked towards the memorial service. Only one thought echoed in my mind, Father. Do you see this? This is the man you once admired. The one you wanted me to entrust my life to. As soon as the funeral ended, I returned directly to where my father had lived. Robert, his confidant for decades, was already waiting in the study. Miss. Robert stood up, his expression grave. Uncle, please be direct. I sat across from him, my back straight. He pushed a document towards me. This is Mr. George's will. He seemed to have a premonition. I opened the documents and quickly scanned them. Most of his assets, including the core group shares, were left to me, but there was an additional clause. If I married Ethan within a year, 50% of his shares would automatically transfer to Ethan. My hand tightened on the documents, my knuckles turning white. So that was it. This was why Ethan chose to make his move today. He couldn't wait a year, or perhaps he feared complications. Getting involved with Tiffany allowed him to secure any inheritance my father might have left her, and by provoking me, he hoped I would initiate the termination of our engagement, sparing him legal and moral repercussions. What a perfectly calculated win-win situation. I closed the documents and looked up. Uncle, if I understand correctly, I am now Sterling's largest shareholder? Yes, miss. You hold the absolute controlling stake. I looked out the window. The rain had begun. My mirthless smile reflected in the glass. Very good. Send out a notice. An emergency board meeting will be convened tomorrow morning at 9. Yes. And the agenda? I turned, stating each word clearly. The agenda is to relieve Ethan of all his corporate duties, effective immediately. Robert hesitated slightly. Miss. Ethan, he's been running things for years. He has deep roots. It might be difficult to. Deep roots? I chuckled softly. Then we'll rip them out. Completely. Hatred, like ice water, extinguished all hesitation. The game had just begun. The next day, exactly at 9 in the morning, I pushed open the heavy doors to the top-floor conference room of the Sterling. The room was already packed, and the murmurs ceased the moment I entered. Ethan sat at the other end of the conference table, in the head of the table seat that had belonged to my father. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit, his expression impeccably composed, though faint dark circles shadowed his eyes. He stood up, attempting to put on his usual gentle smile. Stella, you're here. My condolences. I know you're upset, but the board meeting isn't a place for temper tantrums. Whatever issues you have, we can discuss privately. I walked straight to him, not sitting down. My gaze swept over every board member present, their faces reflecting doubt, observation, and even undisguised contempt. Board members, I began, my voice clear and resonating throughout the room. I am Stella, currently the largest shareholder of Sterling, and your new chairperson. I gently placed the documents I held on the table and pushed them towards Ethan. This is the proof of equity, along with my father's notarized will, certified by Robert. It is legally binding and indisputable. Ethan's expression shifted slightly, but he quickly composed himself. Stella, we all know you're grieving Mr. George's passing, but company operations are not a game. I understand your desire to inherit your father's legacy, but you've never been involved in core business. Taking over suddenly will only throw the group into chaos. Director, who was friendly with Ethan, immediately chimed in, that's right, Stella. Ethan has dedicated years to the group. His performance is evident. You're emotionally unstable right now. Making major personnel changes rashly might not gain everyone's approval. I smiled, tapping my fingertips on the polished tabletop. Performance? Is Peterson referring to the Riverbend, which he personally vetoed last quarter but Ethan pushed through despite objections? That project had serious land use flaws. A preliminary investment of $300 million, and is now completely stalled. This loss. How does Ethan intend to explain it to the board? Ethan's pupils contracted. How did you know? Ignoring him, my gaze turned to another director whose eyes had been flickering earlier. Or, is director referring to that seemingly perfect overseas acquisition last year? The acquisition price was 30% higher than market valuation, and the secret controlling shareholder of the acquired company appears to be a distant cousin of Ethan's? Do I need to lay out more detailed financial transactions before you all? The conference room was enveloped in a deathly silence. I had obtained more than just the will in advance. My father, during his illness, seemed to have vaguely suspected something and entrusted Robert with another encrypted hard drive. Inside were detailed proofs of Ethan abusing his position to transfer assets and conduct illicit profiteering over the past few years. I looked down at Ethan, and the composure on his face finally shattered, revealing the panic and a hint of viciousness underneath. You were spying on me? He hissed, his voice low with anger. When cleaning house, one naturally requires irrefutable evidence. I straightened up, my voice cold and hard. Now, regarding the motion to relieve Mr. Ethan of his position as group president and all other duties, who votes in favor, and who opposes? The wavering board members bowed their heads, not daring to meet my gaze. Director opened his mouth but ultimately slumped back into his seat. Ethan abruptly stood up, his chair scraping loudly across the floor. Stella, you have no right. I've given so much to Sterling. Sterling will compensate you for your contributions according to labor law. I nodded towards the security personnel at the door. Now, please escort Mr. Ethan out. Your personal belongings will be gathered by my assistant and sent to you later. 2 security personnel stepped forward and ushered him out, one on each side. As was led away, he struggled and looked back, his eyes like poisoned knives. Stella, don't you dare get complacent. Do you think this is over? Just you wait. The conference room door closed behind him, cutting off his impotent fury. I walked to the head of the table but didn't sit down immediately. I scanned the room, taking in everyone's expressions. I know many of you here think I'm young, inexperienced, and not up to this responsibility. I don't need your immediate approval. I just need you to clearly see who the true owner of Sterling is now. Meeting adjourned. The directors silently filed out. Only after the last person closed the door did I slowly sit down, my palms clammy with cold sweat. The first battle was won, but I knew that Ethan and Tiffany and Eleanor behind him would not give up easily. The commotion after the board meeting completely subsided. I remained alone in the empty conference room. Outside the window, the city's traffic flowed ceaselessly. The sunlight was dazzling, yet I felt no warmth at all. The composure, decisiveness, and even coldness I'd displayed in front of everyone were like a hard shell, now peeling away piece by piece, revealing the raw, bleeding wounds beneath. I walked back to every corner here still held his scent, and the memories Ethan and I once shared. He used to play chess with my father here. He pledged his vows to me in this living room, and he gently kissed my forehead under that floor lamp. A wave of nausea, churning like a tempest, surged in my stomach again. It wasn't sadness, I told myself once more. It was rage, the shame of betrayal, and a deep loathing for my own past blindness. I went upstairs and pushed open the door to my father's study. It remained just as he had left it, the air filled with the faint scent of old books and cigars. I walked to the massive mahogany desk, my fingers brushing the smooth surface, eventually bracing myself weakly against its edge, and lowered my head. My shoulders began to tremble uncontrollably. Tears streamed out without warning, not sobs, but silent, overwhelming tears, for my father's passing, for the death of love, for everything that had abruptly come crashing down, which I had to face alone. I had lost the 2 people who loved me most in this world. One had gone to heaven, the other had revealed the face of a devil. I don't know how long passed before my tears finally dried. My face felt tight, but my heart, though desolate, felt clearer, as if cleansed by this silent downpour. I straightened up, wiping the tear streaks from my face. The woman reflected in the mirror had swollen, red eyes, but her gaze was clearer and more resolute than ever before. This was where the sadness ended. Ethan, Tiffany, and Eleanor, who had always played the role of the gentle stepmother, everything they had taken, deceived, and insulted me with, I would make them return it all, with interest. I pulled open the bottom drawer of my father's desk, where he kept a few of his most cherished small items. My gaze was drawn to an old pocket watch, which my mother had left him. I picked it up, my fingertip touching a tiny protrusion at the bottom. With a soft click, the watch cover sprang open, revealing not a dial, but a tiny metal USB drive. My heart skipped a beat. My father had never told me about this. I immediately inserted the USB drive into the computer. It contained only one encrypted folder, with my mother's birthday as the password hint. I entered the password, and the files unlocked. Inside were not business documents, but a series of audio recordings, which my father had recorded intermittently during his illness. I clicked on the most recent one. My father's voice was weak, yet clear with a worldly wisdom. Stella, my time is short. The one thing I cannot let go of is you. That boy, Ethan, he has ability, but his mind is too restless. His ambition too great. I gave him a platform, but I feared I would only feed his ambition without ever warming his heart. Eleanor and Tiffany, alas, they are outsiders after all. He paused for a long time, his breathing heavy. If they ever conspire to bully you, don't be afraid. I've left you a contingency, not just the obvious things. Find a man named Caleb. He's a child I sponsored many years ago. Trustworthy and capable, he will help you. The audio ended there. Caleb? I had never heard my father mention that name, but my father's worries and arrangements in his final moments flowed like a warm current into my frozen heart. I was not fighting alone. I gripped the cold USB drive, looking out at the deep night. Ethan, your struggles and resistance have only just begun, and I am ready. The next morning, after the board meeting turmoil, I was woken by an urgent doorbell. Through the security monitor, I saw Eleanor and Tiffany standing outside, accompanied by several journalists with cameras. Eleanor wore a simple yet elegant suit, her eyes swollen, presenting an image of overwhelming grief and forced resilience. Tiffany kept her head down, clutching her mother's arm, her shoulders slightly trembling as if weeping. They arrived quickly. I adjusted my bathrobe and opened the door, my face devoid of expression. Stella, the moment Eleanor saw me, tears streamed down her face before she even spoke. Her voice choked. Your father has only just passed. How could you treat your sister and Ethan like this? Even if they made 1,000 mistakes. You can't kick Tiffany out of the house and Ethan out of the company. That company was your father's life's work. How can you be so reckless? The cameras immediately zoomed in on me, capturing my disheveled, just-woken state and my cold demeanor. Tiffany looked up, her eyes swimming with tears. Sister, I know you hate me for being with Ethan, but we truly love each other. You can humiliate me all you want, but Mom is innocent. She's Dad's legal wife. Your stepmother. How can you not even let her in the door? What a tragic play of mother-daughter affection and relentless bullying. I leaned against the doorframe, silently watching their performance, saying nothing. Eleanor, seeing my unresponsiveness, cried even more sadly to all the journalists present. You be the judge. Mr. George's body isn't even cold, and she's trying to eliminate us. Mother and daughter. I even suspect the will Mr. George left behind has been tampered with. Mr. George doted on Tiffany most of all when he was alive. How could he possibly leave her nothing? I want to request a handwriting analysis and a psychological evaluation. Mr. George must have been mentally unstable when he made that will. She had finally revealed her true intentions, directly challenging the validity of the will. This was an attempt to fundamentally undermine the legality of my inheritance. The journalists, like sharks smelling blood, hurled questions one after another. Miss, what is your response to your stepmother's accusations? Did you make personnel decisions that were detrimental to the company's stability due to personal feelings? Does your monopolization of the inheritance align with Mr. George's wishes? A flicker of unnoticed triumph crossed Tiffany's eyes. I waited for them to quiet down slightly before speaking slowly, my voice not loud, but clearly cutting through the din. Are you done? Eleanor and Tiffany froze. I took out my phone, opened an audio file, and turned the volume to maximum. It was a recording of my father's explicit expression of his wishes for asset distribution, made during his final illness and witnessed by his private lawyer and Dr. Miller, his attending physician. In it, my name was clearly stated, and he emphasized, "For and Tiffany, I have made separate arrangements, enough to ensure they are well provided for." When the recording finished, the scene was utterly silent. Eleanor's face instantly went white. Ms. Lynn. I looked at her, no longer calling her auntie. "My father's separate arrangements for you include a downtown penthouse apartment valued at $80 million, and a $20 million trust fund. Do I need to show the property deeds and trust agreements to the journalists right now?" I paused, turning my gaze to the cameras, my tone calm but infused with undeniable authority. "As for Mr. Ethan's dismissal, it is due to his alleged embezzlement and illicit profiteering. The relevant evidence has been submitted to the board and regulatory authorities. All decisions made by Sterling are based on corporate law and company bylaws, and cannot be slandered by anyone's personal sentiments." I looked at Eleanor, stating each word clearly. "Furthermore, this is not your home. This is a personal property my father left to me. Please, leave my private domain immediately. Otherwise, I will press charges for illegal trespassing and defamation." Security personnel arrived just then, separating the journalists from the two women, who remained frozen in place. Eleanor looked at me with a complex gaze, shock, resentment, and a hint of cautious reassessment of her opponent. She likely hadn't expected me to have such a recording from my father. She ultimately said nothing, dragging a still unwilling Tiffany away, retreating shamefacedly under the journalists' increasingly complicated gazes and flashing cameras. Closing the door, I shut out everything outside. I leaned against the door, taking a deep breath. The first battle for public opinion was won, but I knew that, given Eleanor's nature, she would certainly pursue legal action, and hadn't shown his face yet. Was he hiding behind these two women, letting them lead the charge? I walked to the window, watching the dispersing crowd below. My phone vibrated. It was a message from an unknown number, containing only 3 short words. "Well played." Was it Caleb? Director Thomas of Zenith was a lean middle-aged man with sharp eyes, carrying the shrewdness and caution honed by years in business. We met in a very private lounge at a members-only club. He clearly thought I was there to beg him, adopting a high posture, slowly sipping his tea, and beginning, "Miss, I regret the situation with the West Side project, but business is business, and Venture Star Capital offered terms we couldn't refuse." I didn't beat around the bush. I pushed a thin folder across the table to him, my tone calm. "Director, I understand. So today, I'm not here to negotiate terms. I'm here to offer you a gift." He raised an eyebrow, opening the folder with slight curiosity. After only 1 page, the composure on his face instantly froze, his fingers trembling slightly. He abruptly slammed the folder shut, his eyes, like a hawk's, seizing me with alarm and fury. "What is the meaning of this? Are you investigating me?" Inside the folder was a concise report and key evidence photos from his son Jason's car accident overseas. Enough for him to understand what information I possessed. "Just some information I happened upon," I said, gently stirring my tea. Director's deep affection for his son, and his willingness to spend heavily to quell the scandal, is truly touching. As parents, we always want to clear all obstacles for our children, ensuring their future is worry-free. Don't we? He stared intently at me, a vein throbbing in his temple. "Are you threatening me?" "No." I met his gaze, not backing down. "I'm helping you assess risk. The benefits Ethan can offer you are short-term gains, but he's a man who stops at nothing to achieve his goals. Today he might betray Sterling for profit, and tomorrow he could just as easily sell your, or your son's, little secret as leverage to someone else for an even greater advantage. Do you think it's safe to stake your company's core strategy on such a man and Peakstone, who are eyeing you greedily from behind him?" Thomas fell silent, his expression fluctuating. My words had struck his deepest concern: stability and control. Ethan was clearly not a controllable factor. I pressed my advantage, offering him a graceful exit and a new incentive. Sterling and Zenith have collaborated for years, knowing each other well. For the West Side project, I can not only maintain the original terms but also offer Zenith an additional 3% share of the dry stock dividends upon the project's success. This is a stable, long-term benefit. More importantly, I paused, lowering my voice with a touch of veiled meaning. As long as Sterling remains your steadfast partner, your son overseas will not encounter any unforeseen trouble. In fact, if he ever wishes for a change of environment in the future, Sterling's international resources can provide him with certain conveniences. After all, None of us wish to see a young man's future ruined by a single, unintentional mistake, do we? Coercion and inducement were simultaneously laid on the table. I had given him a safer, more advantageous choice, one that also pressed his weak spot. Thomas leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes, silent for a long time. The only sound in the lounge was the subtle gurgle of boiling tea. A few minutes later, he opened his eyes, looking at me with a complex gaze, tinged with weariness and scrutiny. George raised a formidable daughter. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. In front of me, his tone reverted to a businessman's calm. Notify them to suspend the signing of the cooperation agreement with VentureStar Capital. Yes, indefinitely. Also, prepare to restart negotiations with Sterling. He hung up and looked at me. Miss, you've won, but I hope this is the first and the last time. I smiled and nodded. Director is a smart man, and working with smart people is always a pleasure. I assure you, everything concerning your son will remain within this room today. As I left the club, the afternoon sun was a little dazzling. I took a deep breath, knowing this was only one battle won, far from the time to relax. My phone vibrated again. The same number. This time the message was even simpler. Excellent. Ethan has received the news and is furious. Davison from Peakstone has arranged to meet him tonight. Caleb's information was always so timely. He was like an invisible web, covering the entire battlefield. Ethan's rage was expected, but of Peakstone meeting him personally? Did this mean Peakstone was displeased with Ethan's failure? Or were they preparing to enter the fray themselves, increasing the stakes? I replied with a message. This being the first time I'd actively contacted this mysterious person. Mr. Caleb, could you tell me why you're helping me? The message I sent went unanswered, like a stone dropped into the ocean. It wasn't until dusk fell and the city lights came on, as I finished my last document and prepared to leave the office, that the number finally responded. It wasn't text, but an address, pinpointing a high-rise lounge atop a city skyscraper, with a single accompanying note. Now, come alone. It was direct, an undeniable command, but I didn't hesitate. I needed answers. The lounge was quiet, with an excellent view overlooking the city's sparkling lights. There were few customers at this hour, and I spotted him almost immediately, seated in a corner window booth. His back was to the entrance, his frame tall, shoulders broad. He wore a simple dark shirt, sleeves casually rolled up to his elbows, revealing strong forearms. His mere silhouette exuded an aura of cold hardness that warned people to keep their distance, and an unspeakable sense of solitude. I walked over and sat in the seat opposite him. He looked up. It was an extremely handsome, yet equally severe face. His features were deeply chiseled, his eyes holding the sharp composure of one who had seen much of the world. His skin a healthy, sun-kissed tan. His gaze was direct, like a hawk's, scrutinizing my face without evasion, as if it could pierce through any facade. Stella, he spoke, his voice low, with a husky magnetism, saying my name with unusual naturalness. Caleb. I met his gaze, equally direct. Can you answer my question now? Why are you helping me? He didn't answer immediately but pushed a prepared, slightly worn manila envelope across the table to me. Look at this first. I opened the envelope with a hint of doubt. Inside were several yellowed photographs and some document photocopies. The photos showed a much younger George, squatting in what looked like a construction site or auto repair shop, his arm around the shoulder of a boy covered in dirt, whose eyes were fierce and stubborn like a wolf cub's. Both were smiling, with dilapidated motorcycles in the background. In the boy's features, I could discern the outline of the Caleb sitting before me. The documents were a collection of sponsorship records and report cards, detailing how my father had anonymously sponsored an orphan named Caleb from middle school all the way through his graduation from a renowned overseas business school. The final document was a brief letter of recommendation personally penned by my father, helping Caleb secure a position at a top investment bank. I looked up, deeply moved, and vaguely understood. Mr. George changed my life. Caleb's gaze drifted to the city lights outside, his voice calm, yet imbued with deep emotion. Without him, I might still be fighting on the streets, or have rotted away in some forgotten corner. He taught me how to live, how to do business. He was my only family. He paused, withdrawing his gaze, and looked at me again, his eyes sharp as knives. He contacted me during his illness and shared his final concerns. He feared you would be picked clean by Ethan and Eleanor's crowd, leaving nothing but bones. He asked me, when you needed it, to lend you a hand, out of gratitude for our past. So, He leaned slightly forward, exuding an invisible pressure. I'm helping you, not for you, but to fulfill my promise to Mr. George. This answer was both unexpected and logical. It wasn't random goodwill, but stemmed from the good deeds my father had sown years ago. Then, I met his scrutinizing gaze without flinching. Is your help ending here? A faint, almost imperceptible curve touched Caleb's lips, like a hairline crack appearing in a frozen river. Gone in an instant. That depends on whether you're worth my continued investment of time and resources. His words were almost cruelly direct. So far, your performance has been satisfactory. At least, you haven't wasted the intelligence I've given you. He picked up his glass, gently swirling the amber liquid inside. Ethan and Davison of Peakstone had a very unpleasant meeting tonight. Davison accused Ethan of being useless, unable to even control the most basic situation. Ethan swore he would make you pay, no matter the cost. He might resort to extremes. You'd best be prepared. As for Eleanor's inheritance lawsuit, he continued, his tone as if discussing the weather, the lawyer she hired is a bit problematic, specializing in convoluted cases like this. I've compiled some records of her frequent visits to high-end establishments and luxury purchases over the past few years, along with evidence of her overly close relationships with several male acquaintances. This might prove she's not the grieving widow image she's cultivated, and could influence the judge's discretionary judgment. I'll send it to you shortly. The amount of information was immense, and every piece struck directly at the heart of the matter. I looked at this unfathomable man before me. He was like an iceberg. The visible part was already formidable, and who knew what vast power lay hidden beneath the surface? He was the sharpest blade my father had left me, but this blade seemed to have a will of its own. Why are you telling me these things? I asked. Is it just because of your promise to my father? Caleb downed the wine in his glass, then stood up, looking down at me. The light cast deep shadows on his sharply defined face. Stella, remember, this world is dirty, and rules are for the weak. If you want to win, you have to be more ruthless and more unscrupulous than your enemies. He picked up his jacket, draping it over his arm, preparing to leave. As he passed me, he paused slightly, his low voice almost brushing my ear. Also, I personally appreciate, pray with claws. Don't disappoint me. With that, he walked straight out without looking back. I sat alone, my fingertips tracing the yellowed photographs. My heart stirred with emotion. Caleb's help wasn't selfless. He was observing, evaluating, and perhaps even enjoying this game of revenge. But regardless, I had a powerful, even formidable, temporary ally, and his words clearly pointed the direction for the next battlefront, Eleanor's inheritance lawsuit. I picked up my phone and called Robert, Uncle, regarding my stepmother's lawsuit. We might need to adjust our strategy. I've obtained some potentially very interesting new evidence. Eleanor's inheritance lawsuit collapsed completely when Caleb's provided damaging information was strategically introduced in court, shattering her carefully maintained image as a grieving widow. The judge dismissed her claim on the spot, affirming the will's validity. Not only did she get nothing, but she also became a public laughingstock for attempting to fabricate facts and seize an inheritance. The moment the news broke, my phone rang. It was Ethan. I hadn't blocked his number, keeping it like a morbid curiosity to watch a venomous snake's death throes. I answered, and his heavy, ragged breathing came through the line, as if he was desperately suppressing a furious rage. Stella, you're ruthless. Where did you get that stuff to use against Auntie? Does it matter? I said, my voice flat. Ethan, if you can't handle the heat, stay out of the kitchen. Play? He seemed to ignite completely at the word, his voice suddenly rising, filled with hysterical madness. Do you think I'm playing games with you? You've ruined everything for me, my career, my reputation, and now you've cut off my last retreat. Stella, I won't let you get away with this. I'm finished, and you won't have it easy either. The law will teach you a lesson. I didn't want to listen to his barking anymore and prepared to hang up. The law? He let out a cackling, grotesque laugh, as if he'd heard the funniest joke. Just you wait, Stella. I'll show you what true consequences are. The phone was slammed down. Listening to the dial tone, a chill ran down my spine. Ethan had completely lost control. He was no longer a calculating businessman but a desperate man who had lost everything. Caleb's warning echoed in my ears. I immediately increased my personal security and became extra cautious about my travel routes. A few nights later, after an international video conference, I left the office late, as my driver, Frank, drove me back to the and the car entered a relatively secluded, dimly lit quieter side road. An unmarked black sedan behind us suddenly accelerated, slamming violently into our rear without warning. Bang! The immense impact threw me forward, the seatbelt biting painfully into my shoulder. Frank, shaken but holding the steering wheel tight, exclaimed, "Miss, are you all right? That car's not right." Through the rearview mirror, I saw the black sedan accelerate again, trying to sideswipe us, clearly aiming to force us to stop or cause a more serious car accident. My heart pounded in my chest, but my mind was remarkably clear. Ethan, he had indeed resorted to the most despicable and direct method. "Frank, don't stop. Accelerate. Get to the main road," I ordered sharply, simultaneously pulling out my phone. Frank floored the accelerator, and our high-performance vehicle instantly sped up, trying to shake off our pursuer. But the black car clung to us like a disease, violently swerving to cut us off once more. In that critical moment, a tall dark SUV suddenly surged out from a side road ahead, like a silent beast, precisely blocking the black car's path between them and us. Screech! A jarring screech of brakes and a crash rang out. The black car, caught off guard, plowed headfirst into the sturdy body of the SUV. It instantly stalled. White smoke billowed from its hood. Our car narrowly avoided the collision and stopped, still reeling from the shock. I looked at the SUV that had appeared like a divine intervention. The car door opened, and a tall, familiar figure agilely jumped out. It was Caleb. He didn't even glance at the crashed black car. Walking straight towards us, he tapped on my car window. I rolled it down, meeting his calm, still gaze. "All right?" he asked, his voice still even. I shook my head, my throat a little dry. "How are you here?" "Figured he'd be desperate," he said succinctly, his gaze sweeping over the black car. The occupants of the black car seemed to want to flee, but two other cars Caleb had brought were already blocking their escape, and several agile individuals quickly apprehended the driver. Caleb finally turned his gaze back to me. In the dim light, his eyes were sharp as a blade. "Now, do you still think this is just business competition?" I took a deep breath, suppressing the lingering fear, and my eyes turned cold. "Call the police." The police arrived quickly and took away the driver, whose face was pale and who was reeking of alcohol, an obvious pretense. In the preliminary interrogation, he adamantly claimed it was drunk driving and an operational error, and I both knew this was no accident. The next day, I went directly to the apartment where Ethan was temporarily staying. When he opened the door and saw me, a flicker of panic crossed his face, but he quickly composed himself. "What are you doing here?" I didn't enter, standing by the doorway, and slapped a photo of the black car driver being escorted into a police car last night against his chest. "Ethan," I said, watching his face instantly go pale, my voice as cold as ice. "I've taken note of what happened last night. Do you think finding some low-level fall guy to take the blame will be the end of it?" His eyes darted, his lips trembling. What are you talking about? I don't understand." "It doesn't matter if you don't understand." I took a step forward, closing in on him, my gaze piercing. "You listen to me carefully. This time was an attempted crime, and I can take my time playing legal games with you. But if you dare to target my personal safety again," I paused, every word dripping with ice, "I'll make you realize just how ruthless Stella can be. You, and Peakstone hiding behind you. I won't let either of you off the hook. If you don't believe me, you can try." Ethan was cowed by my intensity, subconsciously taking a step back. The color drained from his face. I didn't look at his defeated look again, turning to leave. As I got into the car, I received a message from Caleb, the driver cracked, pointing to a middleman. The trail went cold at Ethan's assistant. "Be careful. He won't give up." I replied, "Understood. Thanks." This time, it was a truly heartfelt thank you. If not for him, the consequences last night would have been unimaginable. Caleb replied quickly, but the content was unexpected. "No need to thank me. Get ready. Davison from Peakstone wants to see you." The meeting with Davison from Peakstone was shorter and more direct than I expected. This business magnate had clearly lost all patience and faith in Ethan. Ethan's madness and stupidity not only failed to harm me but almost dragged Peakstone down with him. "Miss, you have grit for a young woman," Davison said, sipping his tea, his tone unreadable. "Peakstone will no longer interfere with Ethan's affairs. I hope we can put the previous unpleasantness behind us. In business, there are no permanent enemies." I understood. This was Peakstone sacrificing a pawn to save the king. They abandoned Ethan in exchange for temporary peace with Sterling. I naturally played along. Facing both Peakstone and a mad dog at the same time wasn't a wise move. Mr. Davison is far-sighted and understanding, I said, smiling as I raised my cup. With the biggest external threat resolved, it was time to close in and clean house. The evidence I held went far beyond Ethan's embezzlement and illicit profiteering. Caleb had used certain channels I didn't inquire about. Uncovering something even more damning, Ethan had opened secret accounts overseas, transferring nearly $100 million in sterling funds through complex routes, and, during his cooperation with Peakstone, had secretly double-dealt, taking huge kickbacks from a competing rival. All this was enough to make him rot in prison. Meanwhile, Robert had also filed a countersuit against Eleanor, accusing her of forging evidence, defamation, and attempting to defraud an inheritance. The public sympathy she had manufactured with her victim narrative completely backfired in the face of irrefutable evidence, turning her into a pariah. The time to close in was set for the Sterling's upcoming annual strategic press conference. All media, partners, and company executives would be present. On the day of the press conference, the venue was packed. Standing backstage, I could clearly hear Ethan at the main podium, being interviewed by a friendly media outlet. He presented himself as someone who, though no longer with the Sterling, still cared deeply for its future, subtly implying I was young, reckless, and running a disorganized company. Eleanor and Tiffany even appeared in a corner of the venue, seemingly looking for one last chance to stir up trouble, their eyes filled with malice and resentment. Caleb stood beside me, maintaining his usual composed demeanor. His role today was that of a special consultant recommended by my father's old acquaintance. "Ready?" he whispered. I took a deep breath, adjusted the collar of my suit, my gaze sharp as a blade. "Let's begin." I walked steadily onto the main podium, the spotlight shining on me. The hall instantly fell silent, all eyes focusing on me. Ethan was forced to stop his interview, standing aside, his face a mask of displeasure. I didn't look at the prepared speech, my gaze calmly sweeping across the room. "Thank you all for attending today. Before I present Sterling's future strategy, there are a few old matters that need to be settled here and now." I raised my hand, pointing to the big screen. The pre-prepared information played page by page, accompanied by my clear and calm narration. How abused his power to embezzle assets. How he colluded internally and externally to harm the company's interests. How he transferred massive funds overseas. Every transaction, every detail, dates, locations, amounts. The entire chain of evidence was presented with undeniable clarity to everyone. The hall erupted in an uproar. Reporters' cameras flashed wildly, aimed at Ethan, whose face was ashen. "No! This is fabricated. Stella is slandering me!" Ethan shouted, losing control, trying to rush onto the stage. But he was firmly restrained by the prepared security personnel. "Whether it's fabricated or not, the police and the courts will make their own judgment," I said, my voice not loud, but it cut through the noise in the room. I looked towards the entrance of the venue, where several uniformed police officers, guided by Robert, were walking briskly. "Mr. Ethan," I said, looking at his face twisted by fear and anger, "you are suspected of multiple charges, including embezzlement, commercial fraud, and illegal transfer of funds. This is an arrest warrant." The police stepped forward, showing their badges and handcuffs. Ethan completely collapsed, struggling and howling. "Stella, you venomous woman, may you die a horrible death. I won't ever forgive you." His curses gradually faded as he was led out of the venue. A pin drop could be heard in the silent hall. I turned my gaze to Eleanor and Tiffany, who were attempting to slip away in the corner. "Ms. Eleanor, regarding your case of forging a will, defamation, and fraud, the court summons should have already reached your residence. Furthermore, you are suspected of being involved in part of Ethan's fund transfer scheme, and the police will ask you to return to assist with their investigation." Eleanor's legs gave out, and she almost collapsed. Tiffany supported her, her face as white as a sheet, all traces of her usual delicate pretense gone, replaced by pure, unadulterated terror. They were also taken away by the law enforcement officers who had followed. Having dealt with all this, I turned back to the stunned crowd, my composure restored. "My apologies for exposing you to some unpleasant internal affairs at Sterling, but it is precisely this necessary purging to revitalize the company that allows it to be reborn. Next, I will officially unveil the Sterling's core strategy for the future." My voice was steady and strong, as if the seismic reckoning had never happened. The press conference concluded successfully. Standing in the empty backstage area, my tightly strung nerves finally relaxed. A profound sense of exhaustion and an indescribable emptiness washed over me. George, I did it. Those who hurt us have paid the price. A suit jacket, still warm, was gently draped over my shoulders. I turned around, and it was Caleb. He said nothing, just stood quietly beside me. Outside the window, the sun pierced through the clouds, illuminating the city. All the shadows, betrayals, and struggles seemed to temporarily conclude with the imprisonment of those three. It's over, I murmured, as if telling him, and also myself. Caleb looked down at me. Something seemed to flicker in his deep-set eyes. No longer just pure calm and scrutiny. He spoke, his voice low. It's over. He paused. Or it could also be just the beginning. His gaze met mine, carrying an unmistakable inquiry. I returned his gaze, wrapped in his jacket, feeling the lingering scent and warmth that belonged to him. The fires of vengeance had burned out, but in the embers of life, something new seemed to be quietly budding. Thank you for watching this video. If you have any thoughts about this story, feel free to share them in the comments section. Here is Roses and Love, sharing stories about marriage and women every day. See you tomorrow.